Minuuttia vielä. 2 minutes left. No need to be silent yet. Welcome to Research Data Alliance National Node Finland meeting and workshop. First we have the meeting, and then after lunch we continue with the workshop portion of the program. Like it says there on the blackboard, first things first, Wi-Fi is tiedekulma, alaviiva, what's that in English? Guest, uppercase, and then password is think corner, lowercase. I'm Heidi Laine. I'm the RDA Finland node coordinator. I work at CSC as a coordinator at the Data Management and Interoperability Group. And the first presentation of the program is by Turkka Näppilä and Maria-Elisa Kuusniemi, and it deals with the DMP Tuuli sensitive data guidelines, but they gave me permission to steal a couple of minutes for them, because I just realized that it's probably a good thing to just very shortly tell you what this RDA business is all about. So Research Data Alliance is an international organization for research data related recommendations, development, and basically just a global discussion forum on research data issues. And Research Data Alliance Node Finland is the national network for that. We're bridging the national research community to the global one. And then a big part of what we do is host these events where we share wisdom on research data management. If you are not yet a member of the Research Data Alliance, please join immediately, right now on your mobile phone or laptop, or after the event. You can become a member as an individual. There are also organizational members. It doesn't cost anything, and benefit is belonging to the community, getting information about the activities. You can follow different workshops and interest groups on the RDA website and get information on their activities. So no cost, lot of benefits. Here's a map of the current Research Data Alliance nodes. This is the first wave of the nodes. The nodes are supported by an EU Commission project, RDA Europe 4.0, and there's going to be a lot more nodes in the coming year or so. The goal is to have 22 nodes in Europe. But RDA is global, but this national node structure is a European thing. Then a really exciting thing is that we're going to host one of the 2 annual plenaries of 2019 here in Finland, in Helsinki and Espoo. Otaniemi is the main venue, and now you are about to witness the the world premiere of a short film that presents 6 very jet-lagged people. This was shot in Philadelphia just some weeks ago during this year's first plenary meeting. Please enjoy.
Hello, with this video we would like to welcome you to the next RDA plenary in Finland. And my name is Per Öster. I'm co-chair of the program committee, and we will present here why we are organizing this plenary.
My name is Ella Bingham. I'm from Aalto University. I'm the chair of the local organizing committee. So for research we need to provide the best services and practices to ensure wide applicability and impact of research, and also to ensure collaboration between disciplines to solve the grand societal challenges.
My name is Aga Hienola from Finnish Meteorological Institute. I'm a climate scientist, and I know very well the importance, the need and the frustration of sharing data in order to solve the climate change. So RDA, I think, is the right place to get answers to your questions.
My name is Ville Tenhunen. I'm coming from the University of Helsinki. There will be a number of interesting and happy co-located events around the RDA plenary and about research data management, open science and so on, different topics. RDA offers the great platform for this kind of collaboration across the different borders.
I'm Heidi Laine. I'm the RDA National Node Coordinator for Finland. Finns are really active in RDA. There are Finnish representatives in many of the RDA working groups and interest groups. The plenary gives us an opportunity to grow the Finnish community in RDA even further, and it's also a great chance to promote the RDA outputs and their national application.
Hi, my name is Irina Kupianen. I work at CSC. Finland is a forerunner in open science, and we have been systematically building and developing policies and infrastructures for data. Finland is also one of the founding members of RDA. We really believe that data makes the difference, and that is why we want to warmly welcome the global community to Finland, the happiest country in the world.
Welcome to Finland.
Welcome to Finland.
Okay, so this was a school book example of Finnish people being really excited about something. Here's just to remind you about the program today. We start with the DMP Tuuli guidance. Then we get greetings and summary from the 13th plenary meeting in Philadelphia by Ville Tenhunen. Then I'm going to give a really short presentation on fair guiding principles and how they apply for sensitive data. Then we have Maria Rebinder to tell us about sensitive data in GDPR and National Data Protection Act. And last but not least, Antti Pursula from CSC talking about infrastructure for research with sensitive data. And then we still have hopefully time for concluding discussion. Lunch is served here for those of you who have registered, and probably those who haven't, because there's always some people who don't come and some people who show up without registration, so I'm sure there's going to be enough food for everyone. And after the lunch break we'll move to the workshop portion. So this part of the program, this first part is streamed online, and that's one of the reasons why we are having this discussion in English, because there's been a lot of interest for this program outside Finland, among the other RDA national nodes, but also, for example, Australia. They'll probably watch the recording, though. So now, without further ado, I give the stage to Mari-Elisa Kuusniemi and Turkka Näppilä.
Morning. My name is Elisa Kuusniemi, and I come from University of Helsinki from data support, and I also come from Tuuli project.
Hello everybody, my name is Turkka Näppilä and I come from the Tampere University. I work there as a data management specialist. Nowadays I work at the library. We are conceptualizing data services there, and I will be the coordinator of that. And before I worked at the Department of Health Sciences as a data manager, and I have also practical experience when dealing with sensitive data.
Great, so let's start. First about the project. So Tuuli promotes data management planning. And why I'm talking about data management planning here? That's because we think that every project starts with data management plan. And Tuuli, it has working groups, one for national data management plan requirements and guidance, and one for guidance on managing sensitive data, and Turkka and I come from that working group. I am also on all of those working groups, but and the other working groups, we form groups when we need one, and one of the working groups working at the moment is user survey working group to collect user survey data of tool we use for helping data management planning. And Tuuli is funded by Ministry of Education and Culture since 2015. Yes, data management plan. The point of data management planning is risk management. And when you are managing sensitive data, it's risks that you need to manage. In a DMP, you describe main steps of data management for whole life cycle of the research project. So it's a plan. And next line, I said that you should start with data management plan and supplement it with data privacy impact assessment. I would like to know how many of you know what kind of document is data management plan. Can you raise your hand? You know, most of you know what kind of document is data management plan. How many of you knows what kind of document is data privacy impact assessment? Data protection, that's right. Data protection, you even know there is a different error. Yes, so there is a couple of people who actually knows. And how many of you are managing sensitive data? Yeah, so there need to be correlation. If you're managing sensitive data, you need to know what this is. But Maria will tell you more about it. Yeah, I think the data management plan, the main purpose of plans anyway is to help in communication. Generally we do plans, we write plans so that we can write a plan, give it to someone else to get feedback, to avoid errors. We want to plan ahead to avoid so that there will not be any mistakes when we start to actually work. So that's only the general point of making plans. And the other thing is that if we have written a plan, we don't need to explain everything over and over again for others. And when we work with others, like with experts, lawyers, IT experts, and us data stewards, it's hard to communicate with researchers and experts. Because if you ask a simple question from the expert, like where I can store my data, they start to ask questions. What kind of data? How sensitive? How many of them? How many persons? What will happen if data will be published? They will ask you questions. They don't answer your simple question. And that's because experts need context. They can't answer your simple question without quite broad context. So with a plan, writing a data management plan, you will give the context that experts need to answer your questions. So I recommend you to write a DMP and update it as a communication tool in your project, especially when you are managing sensitive data. So here is a tool. It's a very simple, easy to use tool, and it helps you to write data management plans. Here is some data which tells you that it is easy to use tool. So we asked if it's easy to register, and they said yes. If it's easy to find guidance, yes. And if it's easy to share, download, edit, and so on, yeah. So we have data. It is easy to use tool, so just try it. And this is about the guidance, guidance on managing sensitive data. We think that it's like a seed. This is the seed there. Ooh! Touching. Yes. Very magical. So it's a seed here, and with the help of research organizations, who we hope will add the practical guidance there, because we can't give on national level detailed practical guidance where to store or where is our guidance of data protection in our university. Who is the lawyer we should ask questions? Where is the IT services to find? We hope that this guidance will be taken care of in the research organizations, and after that it will flourish.
Next, I will give you an overview about the guidance document. It is currently available in Finnish only, and it is a working draft. We are finalizing it in a couple of weeks. You can access it through the link shown on the screen, and the final document will be translated into Swedish and Finnish, English. This is the second round of the guidance document. The first version was published last year, and it was published in the DMP Tuuli tool and also in the Senado. But this second version of the document is somewhat different, and we are still discussing whether to publish it in the DMP Tuuli tool or in Senado, but we will decide it soon. So, as Mari-Elisa told, the document is written so that we strongly encourage organizations to make their own instructions, and not giving ready-made instructions on what to do, because it is impossible in practice. And the focus on the document is on personal data and on sensitive personal data, but it is applicable to some extent to other types of confidential data too. The structure and format of the guidance document, it follows, or actually it is identical to the Finnish national data management plan template. It has these 6 topics, and most of which have subtopics. But the emphasis on the sensitive data and the how it differs from the what we call normal data. So here are some reading instructions how to interpret the document. As Maria-Elisa told, we found out that it is impossible to write a document that would be applicable to as such to in all organizations and in all types of research projects. So we made this document a bit different. It is based on questions. The idea is that the researchers and organizations could ask the right questions and find out answers to that, how things are done in their own organizations. And these instructions are intended both to researchers, so that they could be take into account how to deal with sensitive data and what kind of services they should demand, and also it is intended also to organizations, so that they could kind of identify which kind of services they should provide to their researchers. And we also find out that this, since the instructions are for dealing with personal data or sensitive personal data, because of this GDPR, the things are changing. There are no fixed interpretations, and also the infrastructures are not established. So we came to the conclusions that the responsibility for updating these instructions should be given to the organizations. And here are a few examples of the questions what should be asked. The first topic is the general descriptions of data, and here it is very important that the researchers identify that they are having sensitive data. And the second topic is ethical and legal compliance. When dealing with personal data, it is important to identify who is controller of the data and who is a processor. And documentation and metadata part, it could be that also the metadata is sensitive. It is very hard to identify practical cases, but for example, if you make a research over the professors of anatomy in Finland, and there are only kind of 3 people who are professors in anatomy in Finland, so the metadata could in some cases, but this is a bit artificial example, but yeah.
Please use the microphone so that the people following the stream.
I think we very often would have metadata information about full names of people, native languages, which often correlates with the ethnic groups. I think this very fast goes into what we have to think as it's something we need, the researchers need to do the research, but it's probably something we cannot just put openly available. And it's a bit unclear what would be relation of this kind of data to the public metadata portion.
Was a good, better example, yeah. Yeah. And also the GDPR requires that the data processing is documented, and so it could be explained here. And then it's this storage and backup. The question is simple: how do you store and share your data? But how you do it in practice, it is different in different organizations, and it also depends on which kind of data you have. And finally, there's this opening, publishing, and archiving your data. You may not open, if you have sensitive data, you may not open the whole data set, but there may be parts of data which are not sensitive, and then you may anonymize the data and publish it. And in the last topic, data management responsibilities and resources, you should, for example, take into account the cost of anonymization and kind of that. That was that. So if you have any questions, yeah, please do answer.
If there are no... Okay, yes.
Just a small question. Is this a draft, and can we still comment on?
We will publish it in English, Swedish now, and then we will collect feedback like all DMP Tuuli guides. They are updated every year, and every year there is a opportunity to give feedback. But how next year we will decide it on the Open Science Spring Day. There will be some kind of plans for what kind of working group will continue with this guidance.
Okay, any questions over the stream? Just for those who are following the stream, you can give questions and comments through the chat feature. It's on the right-hand side of the video window. So this is streamed through the CSC YouTube channel. Okay, thank you very much, Turkka and Meg. And unfortunately, they won't be able to stay with us, or Turkka will be here. Okay, so if questions come up, you still have a chance to ask them today about this specific topic. But then let's move on to the next presentation. Ville Tenhunen will tell us about his experience at the RDA plenary in Philadelphia.
Yes, good morning everyone. My name is Ville Tenhunen and I'm working for University of Helsinki and Center for Information Technology there, and as a team leader of the IT for Science group, if there is this kind of organizational presentation for myself. Well, within this short presentation, I will give you some kind of insights of greetings from Philadelphia plenary held in
beginning of this month, and well, here I have picked up some themes or issues which I have thought that they are important or interesting or something, and I have to stress that this is those pickings are purely my opinions, that because I haven't have any kind of possibilities to see all those sessions and other things in plenary, because there has been 60 breakout sessions and I was in only about eight or something. Well, this kind of music thing. But okay, let's go. No, this is not the first one. This is the first one. All right, my bad. Theme of the plenary in Philadelphia was with data comes responsibility. This responsibility is important theme in RDA community. It has been important thing within last years, and trust is another one. In Philadelphia there was 448 registrants from more than 30 countries, 31 I counted, but it's possible that number is a little bit greater. There was 60 breakout sessions and number Twitter feed, tweets and views and so on. First thing I have picked up from the program was the keynote speaker Julia Stojanovic from the New York University. She told us about this responsibility and those. She's a data scientist and professor in the university, and she had a number of different examples how data science, machine learning, artificial intelligence has created some kind of discrimination of biased situation in real life. For example, in requirements of the companies or how to companies sell, what pricing they have in different areas of the cities and stuff like that. There is some gender issues, this kind of racial issues and so on, which are followed up some kind of processes where artificial intelligence has used. Well, he told that, okay, biased data reflects the world. When the data is about people, bias can lead to discrimination. So even if data science is such a technological thing, also it's not free about this kind of real world problems. And we have all those traditional evils exist even if we are working in this area. Transparency, it's a cure also here in this area, and we need more some other points also than technology, that we need regulations and civic engagement. Yes.
Thank you. Is this sarcastic to say that data science is algorithmic and therefore it cannot be biased? Isn't all algorithms biased by nature? Is their very standpoint to be biased somehow?
Yes, very good point. It's we can say that also, and it's such a philosophical point of view that every time when there is this kind of people and data, then there is some kind of bias exist in some way. Yes, we can say that. Yes, and well, but I don't know. Well, we can say also that from the natural science, this kind of scientific, how can I say, standpoint, is that okay? If we have a technology, it's free, or this kind of things, human things at all. Of course, we can look those things also that way. But data, well, but her point of view was that there is this kind of bias every time we have a data and people and we are healthy and so on when we are messing these things. Okay, next card is about anonymization. And before the plenary, there was a CoData and Drexel University workshop about about responsible research data management, and there is a number of speakers who spoke about anonymization, or actually in the United States they do not use this kind of term like anonymization. They use terms less identify data or de-identification of data. And there was this kind of little bit philosophical discussions also that, okay, anonymization, it doesn't exist if we look a little bit deeper this situation, because even if you have data set which is very well anonymized today, tomorrow you can tomorrow you can combine this data set with another data set, and day after that you can take another one, unless you have so big data set and the different angles and so on, that there is not any kind of anonymization at all anymore. And you can find those people behind the data if you are putting more and more data in the same package. Okay, this was one discussion about this health data area and clinical data area, and there is also issue that they would like to share clinical data with each other and publish so-called de-identified data sets in this health area also. They have created automatical processes, and they have this kind of software packages where there is rules and methods to make this de-identification for the data sets, and they are running overnight those scripts and softwares and making all day this de-identification things. They are doing this de-identification programmatically. And which is interesting thing, they discuss about techniques like natural language processing, and they are evaluating these techniques, how to use these techniques for this de-identification in the future. And this is something where for example, machine learning comes in. Then digital objects. If you are working for IT center like me, you are interested in digital objects, because this is a little bit technological thing, and this is something what is coming in some way, and it means that there is a number. It's a number of other things than, for example, data itself in the same package. This is not the one file, but it means that there is a linkages between data, metadata, context, and some other things in the same digital objects, which could be, for example, like a database or something like that. And when you have more information about data, you can have more trust, like Dimitris Koreos says. And well, it gives us also more interoperability with data. George Strawn, who is an internet veteran from United States, he has stressed that interoperable data will become core infrastructure, like the internet has already become in our normal world. Internet has connected different networks between each other, and these digital objects will give us something with the data in the future. And now there was in Philadelphia, there was one workshop after plenary where was real life examples about these digital objects, but I haven't made it this. I wasn't there. And also George Strawn stressed that we have to automate some activities in the real life. Then there was an unconference session, and there was one part of the unconference session. It was 45 minutes. It was about role of the artificial intelligence in research data management. Only in research data management, not research and data itself, but only this management part. And well, in this discussion we find number of the number of the examples where we can use artificial intelligence along the data life cycle. And well, it's starting creation, processing, analyzing, archiving, publish, and reuse, and there is a number of different techniques in that. This artificial intelligence is one thing which is coming into the research data life, but also into the research data management. Well, my last slide is about FAIR. FAIR is everywhere. Everything, for example, digital objects, artificial intelligence, responsibility, trust, another number of other things. For example, metadata issues and so on. They are connected to the FAIR principles, and FAIR principles is something what we have to know when we are waking up middle of the night. And first thing is the FAIR principles. We have to know what they are, how to implement it, and there is start to be a number of examples how to implement these FAIR things into the real life. So this is now hot topic, and it will be hot topic in the near future in this scene. Yeah, thank you. Here is some pictures. Yeah.
Thank you. Any questions for Ville? Questions from the remote participants or comments? Anu? Okay, someone has asked if whether the recording will be available. I guess it's worthwhile to say it to broader audience. Yes, it will on the CSC YouTube channel. Please subscribe.
Yes, I have some comments about the anonymization. I usually remove that from the privacy notice if I can and use some other form like identifiers will be removed. So also from the GDPR point of view, I think promising to the data subjects that your data will be anonymized is a very heavy promise. So also from the legal point, I try to avoid it. And then like about the metadata, I think that most of the legal problems related to GDPR will actually be solved by data scientists and IT services and not by lawyers. So this is very interesting. So minimization of data, that's something that lawyers can say that you should do this, but how? It's the data scientists who will solve how the data will be minimized. So thank you.
Thank you. So. Thanks, Ville.
Thank you.
We'll move forward with the program, and that means that it's my turn. And yes, a special thanks for Ville to closing with FAIR principles, because I'm just gonna give like a short, more like an intervention than a presentation on FAIR principles, because this is something that tends to come up whether the FAIR principles they apply for sensitive data, and they do with some limitations, obviously, but that's the case always. So why am I talking about this? It's because in addition to my role as the node coordinator, I also work at CSC, supporting the development of research data services there, and training and other data management related propaganda development. So this is something that we are, of course, like Ville said, FAIR principles are everywhere. So it's also something that we are working closely with, and it's related to many. For example, many EU projects that CSC is involved with. So to those of you who might not in the middle of the night waking up not be able to perfectly recite what the FAIR principles are, here we go. It's an acronym that comes from the words findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And this is a picture from the open air project. So Ville already gave good arguments on why to care about the FAIR principles, but here are a couple of more. So if you're not interested in just good and responsible data management, then you might be interested in complying with these guys. The EOSC, the European Open Science Cloud, is something that is being developed to a large extent following the FAIR principles, and there are core concepts in developing interoperability between the services that EOSC has and the data that will flow from one service to another. The All European Academies, ALLEA, has produced a code of conduct on research integrity that the European Commission is applying to the Horizon 2020 funded projects, and will most likely continue to do so with the next program. The FAIR principles are mentioned in this code of conduct on research integrity as part of good research data management. Then the G20 meeting in 2016 endorsed the FAIR principles in their memorandum. LIBER, this organization for European research libraries, has also endorsed the FAIR principles, and last but not least, our national UNIFI, the Rectors' Council for Finnish Universities, has also mentioned and endorsed the FAIR principles in their action program for open science and data. And these are just a few examples, though. So the FAIR principles really are everywhere, and so no matter what you personally think about them, it's something that you need to be aware of and think about. FAIR is not the same as open, although it has kind of emerged from this open science, broader open science, e-science, science 2.0 discussions. And actually in the UNIFI action program, it is said, and this is actually my writing because I worked at the time in UNIFI when that action program was written, is that the FAIR principles are a way of making clearer what open data or open science means in the context of data. And actually this is not the original intent, but as it often is with these kind of principles and concepts, that they take a life of their own after the first appearance and publication. So this is, I think, a legitimate way of looking at the FAIR principles, but you just have to be aware that this is not necessarily the original intent. This slide I've stole from Sarah Jones from DCC. She's a data management superstar and involved in everything between the earth and the sky. For example, in the RDA Europe 4.0 project. So I think this is a good Venn diagram about the open data and fair data. So data can be both fair and open, and it should be when it's possible, but it's not entirely the same thing. So to take a closer look at the FAIR principles and what they have eaten, they are to a large extent about semantic interoperability of research data, how to make research data machine readable. That's what the original authors intended with these principles, and when you read these descriptions, you can see it clearly there, and they can be read two ways. as you can see, there are brackets over the meta part of metadata. So you can either read it as applying to the data itself, or if you take the brackets away, just applying to the metadata. And this is where the sensitive data comes into the picture, because when the data cannot be fair, it cannot be accessible, or some of the other letters, the metadata can, even though we just a couple of minutes ago or half an hour ago heard that actually metadata also can be sensitive, but that is probably not the case most often. And yeah, the same thing for the letters I and R. Remove the brackets, and the principles are about metadata and the machine actionability and readability of the metadata. And don't just take my word for it. Here's a citation from an editorial in Nature Genetics, which reads as follows: most types of reusable data that are expensive to produce now have purpose-built databases. FAIR principles dictate the publication of rich metadata to describe these data and to enable discovery of what is contained therein, even in the case of sensitive data that identify persons. The data fields and metadata schema should be accessible together with the details of any access restrictions, whether or not the underlying data can actually be accessed. Thank you. Next, unless there are burning questions about FAIR, which I may or may not be able to answer. Are there any? Okay.
Thank you for a good presentation. My question is about, do you know if these FAIR principles have been tried to be automated, or does AI apply to these FAIR principles? Do you have any idea? For example, are there people who have been working on cognitive bias codexes and AI to try, and also these FAIR principles? I'm not clear enough. I want to see AI that is savvy for this development. Is it happening?
Well, this goes a little bit beyond my my knowledge and expertise, but like Ville mentioned, the FAIR principles are everywhere, and they are about interoperability, semantic interoperability, and making data machine actionable and readable. So I guess that's at least like it builds the foundation on which AI applications can be built on. So I'm sure there are initiatives and projects, but I'm not at this moment able to give out any names.
This is the funny thing. I do understand that this is needed for the AI to function, but it would be also cool if AI itself or AIs would apply to these principles, actually publishing their own data processes under the same FAIR principles, right? Then it would be truly open. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so any other questions or comments? Let's move on to Maria Rebinder, who will give us the legal perspective to sensitive data management.
Thank you, Heidi. Yeah, even if sensitive data cannot be open, it can be fair. So I'm from Aalto University. We are also redrafting our data policy to really reflect the FAIR principles. And my subject is GDPR and sensitive data. And there is a lot of misunderstanding about GDPR, even that it somehow prevents research, or a misunderstanding which can be removed by actually reading what the GDPR says. And it says that it should be designed to serve mankind, and the right to protection of personal data is not an absolute right, but has to be balanced against other fundamental rights. And in all EU legislation, the most important thing is always the principle of proportionality. The principle of proportionality, the principle of proportionality. So whenever you hear a legal interpretation that sounds like this is absurd, this prevents science, you have come up with a lawyer who hasn't grasped the principle of proportionality, which is the principle on which all EU legislation rests. So yes, we can do research, yes, we can handle sensitive data in research. So, and then another misconception, the protection of personal data is its own human right. There is a separate human right, the protection of privacy, but the protection of personal data is not a privacy right. That's a separate, totally separate fundamental right. So whenever you handle personal data, you are dealing with this right, even if it's not a private life like somebody's life. But also personal data can be private data, but it's a wider subject. And then there are the other fundamental rights, which are as important as personal data right. Scientific freedom, academic freedom, freedom of expression. And these are reflected in the GDPR. There is specifically also in GDPR national legislation, there are many freedoms in the GDPR for scientific research, for academic expression, for journalism, and so on. And these rights of data subjects that are in GDPR can be limited if they are necessarily and genuinely meet objectives of general interest, like scientific research. And GDPR in the recitals tells more about what can be done and what is the purpose, how the law should be interpreted. There were in the questions it said that GDPR says that you can't do longitudinal research. This is not true. It says expressly that you can do this kind of research from old data in the recital 90. And then there is a very wide definition for research. So also applied research is considered scientific research. And it's GDPR and national legislation is designed precisely to meet the specificities of processing personal data for scientific research purposes. So this is enabled. And I have only 30 minutes to handle processing of sensitive data. GDPR talks about, has special legislation about special categories of personal data. And you might wonder why these are the ones lifted up. It's because the background to these is legislation against discrimination. So anything that has been used in discriminating against persons such as race or ethnicity or sex or sexual orientation has been lifted here to a special category of personal data. Then there is also as sensitive data. You could also talk about, for example, your bank account number or your social security number. These are not mentioned in GDPR, but they are also sensitive data. So sensitive data is larger than what is actually legislated in GDPR. But this type of personal data, and notice that you have data concerning health, which is a big area of data used, for example, in Aalto University. So that is also a special category data. And actually it's the processing is prohibited unless, but this prohibition is not applied if processing is necessary for scientific research purposes. And then it has to be done in accordance with Article 89. So there has to be a national law allowing use of this special category data, and we have that in Finland, and I believe that kind of legislation is in all EU countries. Then there's also one type of sensitive data, processing of personal data relating to criminal convictions and offices, but I'm now concentrating on Article 9. Article 189 tells more about research safeguards. It mentions the very important safeguard, data minimization and pseudonymization. And here we come to this discussion, which I find extremely interesting, about the metadata having real names. To me, that sounds like the principle of data minimization was not followed from the data scientist. That if the data scientist chooses to use as metadata people's real names, I think he's acting against Article 189. But here I feel like I don't have limbs because I haven't studied data science. So if a data scientist can come to me and say that there's a case where there's no other possibility of producing metadata than using in metadata people's real names, then I will believe that you have to do it. Otherwise, I will not believe. But I will change my view because I haven't studied data science, so I'm open to this discussion. But I think this is the key to dealing with sensitive data, data minimization. It's one of the principles, but it's especially important in dealing with sensitive data. And another way of a tool of dealing with sensitive data is the data protection impact assessment. In Aalto University and Taideyliopisto, we have prepared a special document for research data. So that makes it easy. We have done it with researchers, so it makes it easy to do the DEPIA. It's not a hard thing to do the DEPIA. If you do that data management plan with DMP Tuuli, then it's very easy to do also the DEPIA. And that is something that is required by GDPR if you have risk. If the processing of personal data is a risk from the data subject viewpoint. So I would encourage, and my colleagues were in Berlin, where European lawyers were discussing this, and I have discussed this with Marlon Dominguez, who is DPO of Rotterdam University. And in Europe, this has become a standard tool. And I would say that when you are dealing with sensitive data, always do the DEPIA, the Data Protection Impact Assessment. The Article 31 in GDPR tells you the minimum that has to be included in DEPIA. And this is a very good thing to do. For example, when you are applying for project funding, to tell the project funder that you have done the DEPIA and you know the risks and you minimize the risks to the data subject. And in GDPR, you always look at the risks and the interpretation of the law from the data subject viewpoint. So the risks are assessed as what risk do they pose to the data subject. And this is the important viewpoint in the GDPR. Then there is some more guidelines. The Working Party 29 has many guidelines. Now it's called the European Data Protection Board, but it has the old name was Working Party 29, and they have published many guidelines, and also on this what is likely to result in high risk, and they have a more detailed information on what they consider is sensitive data. And for example, location data can be sensitive data, and then there are, in e-privacy, there are special, if you do application with location data, the e-privacy directive tells you that you have to have consent for processing location data. Location data will give you the information if you go to church on Sunday, if you go to gay bars. So location data is sensitive data and should be dealt as so. Location data telling, for example, your phone telling where you are located. So that will tell you about your sex life, about your religious life, about your political views. So location data is an example of sensitive data if you have collect location data from a phone. And as I said, a lot of the GDPR has been, a lot of the principles are then implemented in national law, even though the regulation is law in every EU country as a regulation, so it doesn't have to be implemented like a directive. Unfortunately, there was not a consensus on European level of what can be allowed for science. For historical reasons, for example, Germany was very reluctant to allow a lot of scientific research uses, and a lot of the things have to be legislated nationally, which makes it difficult because research is international and we have the European research projects. So hopefully most countries will have similar legislation. And we have our section 6 that says that processing, if you are processing data for scientific research, then GDPR Article 1.9 shall not apply, and that was Article 1.9 was the prohibition that you can not at all process sensitive data. Then there is then there are rules on derivation from the rights of data subject, and if you process special category data and you take away some of the rights of the data subjects, which you can do in scientific research, you can deny the data subject the right to remove the research data or the right to change the research data. Then you have to do the data protection impact assessment, and you have to send it to the supervising authority, the Data Ombudsman Office. As a practical thing, when we process special category data at Aalto University, we advise the researchers not to deviate from the rights, but to keep all the data subject rights. And why we can do this is because, again, the key to solving the problems are the data scientists, not the lawyers. So if we remove enough identifiers and we very quickly come to a stage where we don't have the identifiers anymore in the data, then we are held by GDPR Article 11, which says that if you don't recognize, if Pekka comes and says, remove my data, and you say, we no longer know what data belongs to Pekka because we have removed identifiers, we can no longer do that, then GDPR says that you never have to acquire more data in order to take care of the GDPR responsibilities. So you never have to start searching to add, like Ville said, if you have a data set, maybe if you add a few other data sets, maybe you could identify who the Pekka was, but you don't have to start doing that re-identification process just to find the data set that was once the Pekka dataset, okay? So Article 11 helps in practice without us having to actually remove the rights. We just have the right, you have all the rights, it's just we cannot fulfill them, which is, again, it's different from removing the rights. We're not saying you don't have them, you still have them. It's just impossible for us to fulfill them. I know this might sound like something a lawyer would come up, but actually GDPR is something that lawyers came up with. But the main point is we can still do research, we can handle the sensitive data, and we can fulfill the requirements of GDPR. It can all be done. So then we have quite a lot of here. I think I had the English in down there, but can I? No. Okay. Well, anyway, yeah. Yeah, yeah. I have how we in practice do this. So we follow the principle of the GDPR, the data minimization. That's actually the key. So the data scientists are the key to solving the GDPR challenges. And then where we lawyers can help is the principle of transparency. So basically, my advice to researchers is keep calm and inform the data subjects. So as long as you inform the data subjects, you can do your research. But it's very important to be transparent about what you're going to do. And this comes back to and the myth of anonymization, because then when you promise to the data subjects, this is what I will do with your data, then that promise becomes the limitation of what you can do. So if you, that's why I think I strongly usually advise against saying that this data will be anonymized. But sometimes if you produce statistical data, that can be done. But for example, interview answers, if they are free text answers, usually can include something. Just if you, even if you remove the names, the survey answers can combined have a lot of data. So what we do is we have this, for sensitive data, we have a special form that takes into notice these requirements, and then as all processing requires a legal basis, we usually use as a legal basis performance of a task carried out in the public interest, namely scientific research, and as another legal basis we use academic expression. So these are two legal bases that can be used for scientific research. And we usually don't use data subject consent as a legal basis. So GDPR offers you a selection of 6 legal bases, and this legal base is specifically crafted for scientific research. The public interest legal base in the GDPR is defined in national law that it is scientific research is one of the public interest tasks that are legal basis for GDPR. So this removes some of the problems with sensitive data. And then can you, there's, I have the Article 11 in, it's a bit lower down. So then we tell the data subjects, well, I can just explain it. We tell the data subjects their rights, but then we tell that if we can no longer, if the purposes for which a controller processes personal data do not or do no longer require the identification of data subject by the controller shall not be obliged to maintain, acquire or process additional information in order to identify the data or data subjects for the sole purpose of complying with the GDPR. This is directly from the Article 11. So we tell the study partners what are their rights. They can request ratification, they can request. This is also GDPR language. You have the right to request, the right to object. And then we tell that if we are in a position where we no longer can do this, then we can't do it, what we can do, okay? So this is in practice how we handle. And then if then there's the ethical review, usually for special category data, for sensitive data, and then there's usually the data impact assessment, and And then if we derive from the rights, then we submit it to the Office of the Data Protection Ombudsman. So these are the protection measures. Then there's also the protection measures of processing of personal data is based on a research plan, and hopefully, as we heard in the morning, also for data management. For a data management plan, it has a responsible principal investigator, and we use it for scientific research or other compatible purpose. So these are also security measures that we use. So this is in practice. So with the DPIA tool, we assess the risk. With the form, we tell transparently, and then data scientists minimize the identifiers. So this is how in practice we can handle sensitive data and comply with the GDPR. So any questions, comments?
Well, thanks. Very interesting. Several questions maybe, but I start with one about the legal basis of processing. So I've understood that consent is quite popular or quite often used legal basis in health area, for example in biobank studies, or if you collect data directly from volunteers, for example. So what's your comment on this, and when can you use the other legal basis for processing, and when should you go for the consent?
Medical research, I'm not expert on medical research, so that is something, because at Aalto University or Taideo University we don't do medical research. So medical research is separate from, is a totally separate area with a totally separate legislation. My understanding is that the biobank law is being changed because actually the Ombuds Office says that the present biobank consent is not GDPR compliant, because GDPR doesn't allow you to give that kind of consent. I give consent for scientific research. That's against GDPR. So it's not possible to continue with the old biobank consent. So consent, my understanding is that the biobank law will be changed into this.
Okay.
Very good question, but I don't do medical research, and this is in the top of this. But medical research is a very good question, because medical research has its totally own legislation. But about the consent to participate, that is always required for ethical reasons. So we do collect always from participants what we call participation confirmation, where they tell the stuff that they have been given the privacy notice, they have been explained what the research is about, they have the possibility, they have had the possibility to answer questions, have their questions answered, so on, and they consent to participate in the research study. But here I had a very interesting change of ideas with Antti Ketola, who was supposed to speak here, and Arja Kuula-Lumi. We all three think that you can also give this consent to participate anonymous, without your name or signature. That you can say that I give this consent to participate by answering these survey questions. So this would be the data minimization technique. So you don't collect names, signatures, and so on, only for the purpose of getting that ethical consent. So we all three think that you can also demonstrate your willingness to participate in a survey by answering the survey questions.
Yeah, thank you for a great talk. I have two questions, if I may. First one, you said that there are different legislations in EU countries. Then what would be your advice, for example, in an EU project where several countries are involved and the plan is to make comparative research with similar data sets?
Just follow the GDPR and the general principles. They are, in scientific research, I don't think there are practically so differences. So I just was in a process of filling filling for the ERC grant, the ethics form. So we went, because it's Aalto University, whoever is the data controller, then you follow that data controller legislation. So we follow the Finnish legislation. I don't think it's going to be a practical. It's just, yeah. I don't think there are hugely conflicting, but in a research study. But then you should really consider who is the controller for that research data and go with the legislation of the controller. Yeah, but yeah.
A question from somebody working with the Germans. So.
Yeah, well, yeah, the Germans, yeah. They have the strictest legislation in Europe. So I haven't noticed yet that it would be a problem but we have to look at this then case by case.
Thank you. And another small question about the publicness of data, because at least in the previous version of the Personal Data Act in Finland, there was this article about if the person is in a public position and if he or she has made the data public by themselves, then it's kind of it's more allowed to handle it. So how would you advise on that? No?
Yeah, exactly. It's also something in the Article 9 that when if you have sensitive data and then that person has made it public, then the prohibition to handle personal data does no longer apply. So for example, if you are using as research data somebody's public Facebook page where they tell about their sexual identity, their political views, then you can use that as research data. So that is still, it's in the GDPR and also in national legislation. So that is there. Good point. Didn't include it here, but yes, it's there still.
Please use the microphone. Just a second.
Is there a difference to consider the purpose of giving out that information? So when maybe at first when the person gave out that information, it was not for the purpose of doing research. And then of course when you are using it to do research, it might be many different types of research. So
yes, that the data was made public, that is only removes the prohibition in Article 9 to process that data at all, but you still have to go always to Article 6, so you always need a legal base. So the fact that somebody made it public doesn't give you the legal base to handle that. For the legal base, you need the scientific research, a task carried out in the public interest. So that's your legal base. And the fact that the person has made it public, that's only removes the prohibition to handle sensitive data. But you always need this. But also you would go there from the other route. So it has two bases why you can use that public data. But you are absolutely right. Just because data was made public doesn't give you the right to use it. You need the legal basis. And you need the privacy notice. So if you are handling Facebook data, you need the privacy notice to tell. But of course, you probably won't, if you look at people's, you probably won't reach the Facebook people whose data you are using. So then GDPR states that as a measure, you should, on, for example, the research project web page, tell that this is how we are using it. So you make that privacy notice public, so at least theoretically it's available for the data subjects, because there is in the GDPR an exception that you always have to inform the data subjects of how their data is being used. That's the starting point, but sometimes that can be impossible if you use data already collected, and then you have to do the DEPIA and look at the risks. But you can still handle the data, but there have to be the safeguards.
I was wondering, so are we seeing some practices when it comes to data collected, sensitive data collected before the GDPR? For example, we have lots of data sets from the 2000s which are still kind of being processed, and we would like to, I work in the Institute for the Languages of Finland and Institute for the Languages of Finland, kotimaisten kielten keskus. So there are many data sets collected in early 2000s, for example, and of course they are not following GDPR in any ways. And then are there some practices emerging how to process this kind of materials? Or stuff that is, or materials that have been collected have not been archived, but now when the GDPR has come, the researchers would like to archive it. How should we as archives and kind of archiving institutions deal with these kind of things?
Like was said in the beginning, I would have to look at the data. But basically, GDPR says that scientific research is compatible purpose, or it says it's not incompatible. So whatever purpose it was first collected for, scientific research is a compatible purpose. So it should be. And when the GDPR came into force, then the supervising authority, the Ombudsman's office, they were flooded with phone calls from researchers saying that I have been collecting this data for 20 years, 30 years, and does this now mean that I have to delete all my data? And the advice from the supervising authority was, take your finger away from the delete button. Do not delete your data because of GDPR. So there has to be solutions to as I said, from the principle of proportionality, probably that data can be used for and preserved for scientific research. But then what measurements have to be taken, how to handle the practicalities, that has to be dealt case by case. But I would say yes, it's possible to preserve that data.
Else? Any questions, comments? Oh, okay.
So yes, I see the research part. In my institute, one of the most common requests we get about our older data sets is that people want the recordings of their relatives. So do we see any way, even like waiting for 100 years or whatever, that this kind of data eventually would then become open? Or is it sort of close to the eternity?
GDPR does not apply to dead people. Yeah, that helps. But also I have removed, because the GDPR always talks about scientific and historical research. As this was today at university, I removed the historical research. But historical research means everything that's not scientific. So anybody just doing historical research would be somebody collecting data about their relatives. That would be historical research in GDPR. So what is done at University of Helsinki in history, art history, cultural history, that's scientific research. But anything that somebody does like at home without scientific background with their relatives or for their community, that's historical research, and that's also allowed. So that can also be allowed. So yes, that can be possible.
Thank you for an amazing presentation. I have a question about the conflict between GDPR and the Finnish local law. You mentioned that the Finnish Personal Data Act Article 6 mentions that GDPR 9.1 shall not apply, and in the Article 9 in GDPR it says if personal data has been made public, it's free to use. Are these in conflict in Finland? Can I use?
No, there's no conflict. So the Article 9.1 doesn't say that. It's Article 9.2 that says that. So yes, there's absolutely no conflict with Finnish law and GDPR. There could not be, because there's always the supremacy of EU law. So any conflict with Finnish law and GDPR would not be possible. It's not possible because it's supremacy of EU law. So the Finnish law can never be in conflict with EU law.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, now I think it's time to move to the last presentation. We still have after that time to discuss try to get back to the PowerPoints. Oh yes. Applause to the amazing Maria Rebinder. Last presentation is by Antti Pursula from CSC about infrastructure for research with sensitive data.
Yeah, thank you. So yes, I'm Antti Pursula. I work as program director for sensitive data and also some other areas at CSC. And now I'll talk about the infrastructure or the platform that can be used for managing sensitive data. So where could you store your data or make it available for reuse or process it? And this is my kind of outline of the talk. So I will first say a couple of words. Why do we need this kind of infrastructure? On the other hand, I think it was already clear from the beginning and others have touched upon it or actually said very much about it. So I don't use much time for that. Then I'll tell what kind of services there are in Finland or at CSC for research use available for, I mean, basically all university researchers. And then about what kind of collaboration we do in international setting to make data sharing or reuse possible in cross-border projects as well. Yeah, so this is kind of very briefly the setup here. So we know that in many fields of research it is needed to use some type of personal data or sensitive data for research, and that then we can say that this is for the benefit of society, and then on the other hand, there are the legislation on privacy and data protection and so on, which then seems to be at first in a bit of a conflict or at least putting different types of demands that then you need to protect these rights of individuals. So in other words, you can say that there is a kind of a challenge, or the challenge is that you need to balance these both approaches, society for benefit and the privacy of the individual and the data protection of personal data. And what I'm now focusing on is this part. So there needs to be some kind of a secure IT services, secure IT platform, so infrastructure to solve this challenge. And this, of course, is not everything, as we have heard. IT infrastructure needs to be compliant with legislation and regulations, and it's kind of one part of the big picture of how you can manage and process sensitive data. And the FAIR principles apply to sensitive data as well. Heidi already explained about that, but I've been showing this slide as well. So personal data cannot be open data, but it can be fair. And here are some of my ideas what this would mean. So if you have, you can make the metadata findable typically, and you have access when authorized in a secure environment, and then for interoperability, use the meta or the standards and standard formats and so on, and reusable if it's possible from the legal side. By the way, I can also add to this metadata discussion whether it can be sensitive. So again, an example from this more of a biomedical side, that when there are genetics studies, what researchers say the metadata includes is the phenotype. So it includes, for example, the diagnosis that the persons have had, or age group or sex and so on. And then that you could say that that's something where you can identify the person from. I'm not sure if I agree with those that kind of approach to metadata. To me, the metadata would be that about the data collection. That now this is a collection of genetic data from individuals from Finland, and then this more detailed phenotypic information would be kind of a, let's say, supplement in the data or something that can be seen only after going through the hoops of getting access and permissions. So that's kind of my, let's say, a bit of a practical engineer-minded solution to the sensitive metadata problem, that you actually may make it to be part of the data collection. So let's go forward and go to the practical solutions that CSC is offering or is also developing further for sensitive data. And I thought I'll entertain you with the brief video first, as we have heard a lot of discussion here. So let's see how it works. Yes, I think we tested that I need to go out from the. Does it actually? We should go to the browser window. So this is about the
CSC's BOTA cloud services offer cloud resources that can be easily scaled.
Yeah, I can start it then. Yeah. So this is about the cloud services that we have at CSC, and there is actually a cloud that specifically the purpose is to be used with sensitive data. So it is briefly explained in this video that how does it
for your needs
from the normal research cloud.
Anywhere and anytime. So you don't have to buy and manage your own systems. Just take it, use it, scale it, and when you're done with it, dump it. So how does it work? There are currently 2 cloud computing platforms, cBOTA and eBOTA. The difference is that with cBOTA, you access the computing resources securely over the internet. cBOTA can be used for research and educational purposes by Finnish universities and polytechnics. The service is also available for companies and projects outside Finland as a commercial service. With eBOTA, the security is taken on to a whole new level. You'll have a dedicated connection straight to eBOTA resources. eBOTA is for organizations that require high performance, high security, and a certified environment for sensitive data handling. So both eBOTA and cBOTA offer high-performance computing as a service with superior flexibility and user experience. This is called infrastructure as a service. BOTA services can be used for research and education in various areas of science. This can be scientific modeling and number crunching, for example in life science, big data, astronomy, or financial analytics. You'll get support from our team who understand the needs of science. Both cBOTA and eBOTA are secure and highly scalable. Using these services frees you from managing your own hardware and data centers, whether you need the resources for an hour or a year. All CSC services are hosted in Finland, giving you confidence that your data is safe.
Yes, so we have a cloud service called eBOTA that is certified and compliant with our regulations for sensitive data, and it is, as the video also tried to explain, it's an infrastructure as a service model, and in practice it means that we can provide for the end user a closed environment with complete isolation from other virtual machines and from the internet and from other customers on the same platform. And this is suitable for all fields of science, In practice, the virtual machines or the resources in the cloud, they become part of the customer's network, so to say. So there needs to be a customer system or endpoint where you connect this ePortal cloud from CSC, and then this connection is done with a private network, so that no one else can reach those that part of the cloud. And this picture gives a kind of a schematic overview of the structure. So the customer site is here, CSC site is here, and there is only one way of reaching the actual data and the processing area. The only thing that is reachable from the regular internet is the administration interface, where you can manage your private cloud area. That's for administrators of the customer, but on that route it's not possible to reach the actual data or the virtual machines processing that data. And we have demonstrated that this design works over longer distances as well, so it's even if you need to have the private connection. We have made the demonstration to Sweden, for example, with this. Okay, but it's maybe a bit of a special purpose still. You need to have your own system where you connect this, and you need kind of an IT expertise to set up. So we are now going towards more of a comprehensive sensitive data management platform, and maybe this picture clarifies it a bit. So the purpose here is that it's possible to, I mean, there is a data storage, you can call it also data warehouse. The idea is that it's kind of a repository where organizations or research projects can deposit data, and then it's possible to discover this data via this non-sensitive metadata, depending of course on the need of the project. So if someone is storing only for their project, you don't need to make it discoverable for others, but it is possible. There are backup systems planned to store even on archive the data. Then there would be there are already all of this has been demonstrated, but it's not on a service level yet. So it's possible then also to take connection to your processing area directly from a web browser using kind of a remote desktop system, so that it's no longer needed to configure this a bit difficult private network between your organization and CSC. So here we have use cases. They are mainly from the life science or biomedical field, and that comes from this so-called Elixir infrastructure. But there are also other use cases. For example, language research is one of those that we are dealing with. Well, a brief example of what, for example, has been done with this data that CSC is currently hosting is a study published in Nature Genetics on meta-analysis, a lot of individuals, and then the topic is migraine and what is the genomic risks to develop that kind of condition. And in fact, this data from Finnish data subjects was sequenced in the United States, and I believe also processed there, but then returned back to Finland and to CSC storage for archiving and keeping it available for longer term. Another a bit different type of an example is the Statistics Finland remote access system to register data. We also have experts there in the back row if someone wants to ask more about this Fiona system, but it is a environment where you can get access to Statistics Finland register data in a very secure setting, and it's a Statistics Finland office service, but actually the system is running on CSC platforms. So here was some kind of a very brief introduction of or overview what is available from CSC in Finland, and it's just possible to start using those actually, or if you're interested, so we can talk more afterwards. Then I wanted to give a couple of examples what kind of collaboration we do internationally in the field of sensitive data. There was already a question on cross-border projects. Here again I have to say that our focus is of course the technology again, so not so much the legal side, but it's always interesting to try to understand that part as well. So the first one is I introduce a project called Neik Trygve. It's a Nordic project funded by Nordforsk, or actually Neik, Nordic E-Infrastructure Collaboration, which is actually an office under Nordforsk. And then the partners from the 4 Nordic countries shown in the map, they are the Elixir infrastructure nodes. Yeah, I don't go into detail what is Elixir. I actually have a slide on that. If we have time, I can show it. In this project, the idea is to try to develop infrastructure that can be used for large biomedical studies across countries. So where you get the data from several countries, well, in these 4 typically. And each country already hosts or operates a platform or an environment where you can, that has been guaranteed or is compliant with the regulations for sensitive data. And here the idea is to make these systems interoperable and utilize them for really kind of facilitating these large-scale studies. So for example, collecting data somehow within these systems and then making a connection. Let's say you could do a piecewise analysis or meta-analysis of the data that is stored in different locations, or you can bring the data together in different manners in this controlled infrastructure to do research on a larger sample. Here I also wanted to advertise also a workshop that we are organizing within Neik conference in this Neik Trygve project. It's in 15th of May in Copenhagen, Open Science with Sensitive Data. So if you're interested, I think there is still some time to register to this event. Yes, on the Nordic level there is other type of activities going on as well, initiated by Nordforsk. There is something called Health and Welfare Program, and they have an initiative on something called Nordic Commons for health data. So there the idea is, I think it comes a bit more from the register side. So the health registers data should be made, and biobanks as well, should be made available for research and also possible to combine it across countries. And here actually the previously shown Trygve project and CSC's resources as part of that are, it's a potential way of actually making it a reality. And then I'll show an example on the European level. So European Open Science Cloud was mentioned already by Heidi. So this is a very large initiative driven by the European Commission, and here the idea is really to bring together data and data infrastructures and also computing infrastructures. Currently in Europe there are several of those so-called e-infrastructures, larger and bigger ones, and now the EOSC, as it's often called, EOSC, is trying to make kind of a common view and common access point for end users to reach those services. So anyway, there are several projects going on under this EOSC umbrella. One of them is EOSC Hub, a big project, and from CSC we are partners in, well, many aspects, but there is also a task for sensitive data. And here we are kind of utilizing the same idea that we have with the sensitive data platform to produce something called secure B2Share. Well, it's those who are available with or those who know EU.data infrastructure, again, it's something in Europe that has produced several services for managing research data, and B2Share is one of those services. It's for storing research data and making them fair, I maybe dare to say. So the idea is to produce something called secure B2Share, that you could actually make sensitive data fair in European level with this service. Here again, the idea is that the actual storage is in a secure setting, like the CSC sensitive data platform, but then you can have at least certain amount of the metadata available and discoverable for researchers European-wide. Yeah, okay, there is an article, a link for someone who is interested to find out a bit more about this sensitive or secure services in the IOSC level. There is also something called IOSC Marketplace, which would be the place to find the best European services for data management or from data infrastructures, let's say. So we have CSC's ePOTA there as well. So one possible way to discover this service. Yes, how I'm doing with the time. Yeah, well then I'll introduce as a final example Elixir research infrastructure, which I've already mentioned a couple of times. Elixir is a very large research infrastructure in Europe for managing life science data, life science information. It has something like over 20 countries who have joined this infrastructure, and Finland is one of those, so we are officially a member of this RI. And the Finnish Elixir node is located at CSC. And our focus has been these cloud services, compute services, and AAI, meaning authentication and authorization, and then training. There are some nodes who are focusing on completely different things, and many of them are not concerned with sensitive data at all, because this also involves data from well, all sides of life science, biology, plants, animals. But in this Elixir context, a lot of this development that I have described now has been taken, and there are several initiatives, for example, for federated archiving of genetic data in Europe, so that you would be able to again make your data findable, but not moving it outside from your local or national borders. Right. I think that was it. So I've tried to show that there are special demands or requirements for the infrastructure that is used to manage sensitive data, but those can be solved from the IT side, so that's not the problem. Our main fully operational service for sensitive data at the moment is this ePOTA cloud, and we are really in progress of providing a more fully fledged solution for sensitive data for kind of the all aspects of the data management. And yes, and the purpose of this international work is to really facilitate also international aspects and cross-border projects, as we often know that the research is very international, and those problems come at hand as well. And finally, I want to also advertise CSC's resources or materials for sensitive data. So, for example, we had a webinar some months ago, which is linked there. There is a blog text, and there are other similar introductions to what sensitive data services are available from our website. Yes, thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Antti. And now we are in the discussion portion of the program, but I suggest that if there are specific questions to Antti related to his presentation, we start with those and then move to the more general.
Thank you very much. I have a practical question. Is the ePOTA free for Finnish universities, or do we buy it from the marketplace?
It is free for Finnish universities when it is for open research or higher education. That's then for that purposes it is paid directly by the Ministry of Education. So short answer is yes, it's free for you.
Thank you for a great talk. Question, do you have any like portal services or other CSC services or in planning that would allow a simultaneous access and handling of that data? Meaning that I'm working with textual data mostly, like social media messages, and often we need to annotate with several annotators that data at the same time. And currently, unfortunately, basically Google is the only service that offers any tools where you can do it if you really need to do it at the same time. So do you have any solutions or plans for that?
Well, I think the infrastructure or the platform supports many simultaneous users, but then I understand it's about the software that is being used for the annotation, and I'm not aware of such tool from our side. Although I know we have these some of annotation tools for language research, so but I don't know about those technical features so well.
I'd like to ask a question about some joint research projects with several organizations. If they are dealing something with confidential data, we are usually very precautioned or not that easy to use, like public cloud services, Google Drive, Dropbox, or things. But would you have any service for that purpose?
Well, without knowing the details, I would think that this ePOTA service should be usable or suitable for that type of case. So in its current form, when it's only the infrastructure as a service, you would, for example, make the private network connection from CSC data center to, let's say, your university IT center, and then install some kind of a software or access control on that end, on kind of your end, and then let all the collaborators from other countries to come to use the platform from that route. And now what we have already as a kind of a prototype stage is this remote desktop, and then for that would be probably then easier to get into use in several organizations, that anyone then could who get the account could log in from the CSC hosted desktop directly.
Have there been any questions or comments from the streamers? Okay.
No one there in the internet, I guess.
And can you also confirm that the CPOTA and ePOTA are free to use for the research institutes in Finland?
Yes, yeah. Thank you. That was a very good point. They are, in fact. That's a new thing, and since at least the start of this year, it is really so that for the state research institutes can use the systems on the same conditions or same purposes that the universities. So when it's academic research. Yes, that was a change in our owners' policies. So now our funding, I assume, comes then from a larger, not only from Minister of Education, but the Minister of Finance has funded part of our new infrastructure investment. So that's at the same time the access was open to research institutes. Yes.
Thank you. You mentioned this data warehouse within the protected system. Is it then connected somehow to the PAS services, or is it something totally different then? Is it connected to long-term archiving and storage of this data?
That I would say is in planning at the moment. So it's not concretely connected, but we have kind of recognized this need in some cases. So, okay, PAS services, meaning long-term preservation or of data. We are providing that service from CSC, and it started with the, you probably know this, the cultural and museums side, and now we are extending it, or have extended it already to some research data. And now then the question is how to preserve sensitive data for the long term. So that's in planning, not yet there.
Hi, thank you for a good presentation. Is it possible to store audio-visual material on the cloud as well? And do you have transcribing tools within the cloud as a service?
Yes, it is possible to store audio and video materials, but for the software as a service, we probably don't have that. So our focus is to provide this infrastructure. So again, maybe the same answer I gave already for the other kind of transcribing question is that I'm not 100% sure what tools the Language Bank of Finland provides, which is hosted at CSC. So there might be some kind of, or there are some annotation tools already, but I don't know how well they are applicable to your case. And well, basically, as when it's an infrastructure as a service, the main kind of the service model is that we provide the platform and the customer comes with the software. So that would be the short answer for it at the moment.
Okay, if no more questions specifically to Antti about this infrastructure and services presented, we have some time for a more general discussion. And to kind of kickstart that, when you registered, there was a field in the registration form where you could give out your or write your gripes about sensitive data services and sensitive data management, and so I have gathered them here on a couple of slides, which might be interesting and good food for thought for the discussion. I kind of very roughly grouped these issues that were raised by you into 3 categories. The first one and the most popular or unpopular, however you want to look at it, was this social, legal, human interoperability, and again, this is my personal thinking. So someone else might group these in some other way. That's one thing that's up for discussion as well. So the first one is a classic already. What is data? So one challenge for managing sensitive data and developing services for sensitive data is that there is no consensus, or there might be, but it's too discipline specific, or maybe not broadly enough recognize that there is a definition on data, a common definition. Consent-related issues, that's also a challenge. Full understanding of consent to publish, including how data will be published for researchers and research participants during data collection. Recognition, I guess this has to do with merit side of the which is itself quite a broad sub discussion of the open science discussion, how to or open data or fair data or whatever, how to create incentives for researchers to manage and share their data. That might be interpreted in other ways as well, but that's how I associated it. Data sharing and opening / publishing of pseudo-anonymized data. I don't know what pseudo-anonymized exactly means here, but again, that's up for discussion. Balance between usability and security. And then there was a very long and very thoughtful answer, which I won't read out loud now, but it was about, starts with infrastructure related issues, but at the end was more about the kind of the social interoperability side of things, common practices and so forth. If the person who has written this wants to identify themselves, they can explain it and better than I'm doing at the moment. Agreeing on processes and conditions on how personal /health/ sensitive data from different register holders or data or data controllers can be brought together on a joint secure processing platform for research projects, repository and storage policies. Then the next category was infrastructure / service ecosystem, storing, how to open project metadata, another comment about storing and sharing of sensitive data, national tools and services, where to find secure environments to access and analyze. This was already touched upon just now. Getting practical and secure solutions for transferring or sharing sensitive data with trusted parties, lack of platforms. And the last one was proprietary data, especially social media data. What to do with data from global media companies. And the last one is a little bit vague, but if anyone wants to clarify and identify themselves as the author, is free to do so. But so these were the concerns and challenges that you had. So, is there something that you'd like to, now that crowdsource? Now that we have a room full of experts from different points of views.
Thank you, Heidi. I have some sources for research data. I used the Public Sector Information Reuse Directive, Article 2, the proposal for renewal of this directive. It has definitions for document and for dynamic data, for high values data sets, and a definition for research data, which means here documents in electronic form, means documents in digital form other than scientific publications which are collected or produced in the course of scientific research activities and are used as evidence in the research process or are commonly accepted in the scientific research community as necessary to validate research findings and results. So I have found that definition in the directive useful. Then about pseudonymization of personal data, there is a referee article, Pseudonymization of Personal Data According to the General Data Protection Regulation by Laura Tarhonen, openly in online. And about anonymization techniques, as I mentioned earlier, the Working Party 29 has published guidance on anonymization techniques. So that's also available online. So these are at least good sources for discussing these questions.
Yes, and I will share them. The presentations will be linked to the event page, but I'm not sure how findable and persistent that is after this event. So I might create a wiki page or something of that kind, and I'll share the address with you sometime after this event. So thank you very much, Maria. That sounds like a treasure of information. So are there any things that you'd like to address at this moment, or are you just hungry and tired, which is totally legitimate? So we have a lunch is being served at 12:30, which how many minutes away? There's still 22 minutes. If they are very precise, hopefully it'll appear a little bit earlier. But since there doesn't seem to be loads of questions and comments, I could very quickly explain you what the workshop is about that we will have after lunch. I'll just hope no one gets motion sickness. There's loads of slides. I have one slide about the no, ei ole ehkä tarpeen. So Tuukka Truberg, who is in charge of the technical side of the stream here. Thank you very much, Tuukka. Asked if we're going to continue with the stream, and I said no. So so that this concludes the streaming part, and I guess we will also be able to change into Finnish then. But thank you to everyone who has been watching the stream, and if you've been watching the recording, thank you the same. Okay.